mates. Good morning, everyone. I and my group mates will be discussing the first of several concerning the skeletal system, which is the overview of the skeleton. I am Miss Lopez along with Miss Balmilero, Miss Buenafe, Miss Silvestre, and Miss Ventura. So the goals of our topic is to describe the organs of the skeletal system, describe the gross and microscopic structure of bone tissue, list the primary functions of the skeletal system, and lastly, outline the organization of the skeletal system. The skeletal system's major organs are bones and ligaments. Ligaments are simply cords of regular dense fibrous tissue that bind the bone to one another, while the bones provide the structure of our body. It also protects our vital organs and allow us to move. So the plan of the skeleton. So the human skeleton is consists of 206 bones if and only if there is no extra bones, which is the sesamoid or the wormian bones. So the human skeleton is divided into two, which is the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. So the axial skeleton consists of 80 bones, 8 cranium bones, 14 facial bones, 6 ear bones, 26 bones for the spinal column, 25 bones for the sternum and ribs, and 1 unattached bone, namely hyoid bone, making it 80 bones. So we have the appendicular skeleton, which is divided into two, the upper extremities and the lower extremities. The upper extremities that have 64 bones and the lower extremities that have 62 bones, making it 126 in total. All in all, we have 126 bones for appendicular skeleton and 80 bones for the axial skeleton, making it 206 bones. Okay, let's discuss about the extra bone. First is the sesamoid bone. Sesamoid is a bone embedded in a tendon. So this is an example of sesamoid bone. Next is the wormian. It is the additional bones sometimes found between the cranial sutures of the bones of the skull bone. This one.
Okay, so let's start with the gross structure of the bone, wherein it has 8 parts: ligaments, periosteum, articular cartilage, diaphysis, epiphysis, medullary cavity, endosteum, and the cancellous bone. So for the first part, which is the ligaments, it says here that a ligament is a fibrous connective tissue that attaches bone to bone. It also serves to hold the structures together and keep them stable. Next is the periosteum. Periosteum is a membranous tissue that covers the surface of the bone. It also serves as the protection of the bone, and also it has the ability to help them heal. It has also 2 layers, the fibrous layer or outer layer and the osteogenic layer. The fibrous connective layer is mostly composed of collagen and contains nerve fibers that cause pain when the tissue is damaged. The second layer is the osteogenic layer. It contains cells that help the bone to grow and repair, and it is called osteoblast. Then we have the articular cartilage, wherein it provides lubricants that minimize friction and mechanical wear. It also provides or spreads loads over a wide area that reduce contact stress, and it has no blood supply and nerves. And the diaphysis, wherein it provides strong support without cumbersome weight. It contains the medulla of the bone, in which it is the house of the bone marrow.
Ng bone, 1 proximal to diaphysis and 1 to distal. Epiphyses are the rounded portions of the end of the bone separated from the metaphysis by the physis. Thin layer of articular cartilage cover the ends of the epiphysis where the bone articulates with other bone. Medullary cavity, the wall surrounding the space that humid both can cancellous and compact bone. The cavity generally contains yellow bone marrow. Yellow bone marrow consists mostly of adipose tissue. Endosteum, thin of the epithelial membrane that lines the medullary cavity. In diaphysis, as well as smaller cavities in the epices of long bone in the interior and the other bones. The cancellous bone, like diaphyses, have a compact bone but the medulla is often different. Inside of each epiphysis has cancellous, or we called a spongy bone. Spongy bone is very sparse and it is located at the epiphysis of a long bone and the lines of medullary cavity of a long bone. Soft tissue is spaces of the cancellous bone, often red bone marrow, which produces a blood vessels.
Aside from human skeleton has 206 bones, we will also discuss the 4 bone types. First bone type is the long bone. The long bone is a cylindrical longer than wide. It has a thick outside layer of compact bone and an inner medullary cavity. The long bones also has a shaft and 2 ends. The examples are humerus, clavicle, radius, ulna, metacarpus, phalanges, femur, tibia, and fibula. The second bone type is the short bone. The short bones are long as wide and almost cuboidal. Its function is to provide support and stability with little to no movement. The examples are carpus, patella, and tarsus or talus. Flat bones. These bones are sheet-like and curved rather than absolutely flat. It composed of thin layers of compact bone, enclosing between them a variable quantity of cancellous bone. The examples are parietal bone, frontal bone, occipital bone, lacrimal, nasal, vomer, scapula, sternum, rib, and the hips. The bones that don't fit in any of the categories are considered irregular bones, like ethmoid, sphenoid, temporal, palatine, inferior nasal concha, maxilla, zygomatic, mandible, hyoid, sacrum, vertebrae, and the coccyx.
The things that I want to talk or report is going to be bone markings. Number 1 is tuberosity. Is a large rounded projection that may be rough and okay. The best example of a tuberosity would be the deltoid tuberosity, because it's going to be where the deltoid muscle will attack to the humerus of shoulder joint, and that's basically it. It's large rounded projection that probably is rough end. Next is crease. Is a narrow ridge of bone. Probably the best way to describe that would be the iliac crease. So the top of the pelvis has a narrow ridge of bone, and it is a kind of prominent, and it is considered to be a crease. Next is trochanter. The only place that you'll have a trochanter is a femur. So if you look over here, there is a big one here, which is called the greater trochanter, and the little one, which is called the lesser trochanter. But these are large, blunt, irregular shaped roses, and the only example that we have is going to be in the femur. So if you put down trochanter anywhere else but the femur, is going to be wrong. A line. Line is just that it is a line, and so in this particular example over here. This is the anterior portion. You can see the intertrochanteric line, and then as you will do down the femur, there is a line, and they use the Latin name for it, which is called linea. So the linea aspera, which would be on the posterior aspect, as your femur is going to be where your hamstring muscles will attack to the femur, and it's along this line, and the definition is a narrow ridge of bone. It's usually less prominent that occurs, and you'll see that all of these sound somewhat similar. Next is the tubercle. It's a small rounded projection and that is basically, it is just a bump on a bone, and so rib tubercle is going to be this little tiny bump, and I think there's actually one shown here. So here is a rib, and here's the posset. And this the little bump here is called the rib tubercle. It is just a bump on the bone.